Out of Apple's entire lineup, if you had to pick a device that's most suited to beat a portable console, well, you'll have to pick the iPad, in my opinion at least. And this is the latest iPad with the latest XDR display, the latest speakers, the most up-to-date gaming library it's ever had. Oh, and the M2 chip inside of it. So the question is, what would your experience be like with this device if your primary and only objective is to use it for gaming? First, let's talk power and performance, and whether the M2 chip is useless on the iPad Pro like many people are saying it is. See, it's a popular opinion, some might say fact even, that the iPad Pro hasn't really upgraded since 2018. Because even the iPad Pro of 2018 is more than powerful enough to handle more than 90% of whatever you want to get done with the iPad. And 90% might even be a small number if you ask some people. But see, gaming is a specific thing. And I do have the 2018 iPad Pro here. Yeah, my baby's been through a lot. I don't want you to have to look at her though, so. But we're going to play some graphically intensive games and see just what the power difference is between the 2018 iPad Pro and the M2 iPad Pro. Let's start with the 2018 iPad first. We already know it can play an intensive game like Apex Legends, but can it do it on the absolute highest settings available? Well, yes, actually. Well, almost. I couldn't get it up to 40 frames per second on the highest settings around the first time I played Apex, but a week later, I got an update, and then it could go up to 50 frames per second. And then a week or two later after that, I got another update, and now, even the 2018 iPad Pro can play Apex as smooth as the M2 iPad Pro, which is at 60 frames per second. Apex doesn't let you go any higher than this, at least at the time I'm making this video. But to be fair though, the M2 iPad Pro never had any lag problem at all, like the 2018 iPad, and I do think that there could be even more updates in the future that lets the M2 iPad run Apex at 120 frames per second, while some other iPads might not be able to do so. But at the end of the day, if power and performance is the reason you want to get an iPad, and you think you want to get the latest iPad, well, I have to say that even in 2023, right now, the M2 iPad Pro isn't the iPad you absolutely need to get. Because there are other iPads that can do basically the same thing you want with just about 98% of games out there. And I actually thought Apex would be a good example to show the difference, but then updates came and, well, you know. Now, with that being said though, the 2022 M2 iPad Pro is the most powerful and the most future-proof iPad in the world at the moment, and in my experience, you don't even need updates or anything. This is the case with just about every single game you can play on the new M2 iPad Pro. There's no game you're going to play, or at least there's no game I've played, that has done what the 2018 iPad just did with Apex Legends. And this actually is one of the most graphically intensive games you can play on the iPad. And I played a whole lot of graphically intensive games on the M2 iPad Pro. Games that no cause problems for some flagship phones out there. And every single game I play with the highest, most intense settings. And up until now, I've never had any game too powerful for the M2 iPad Pro. In fact, the only thing I've had the M2 iPad struggle to do is edit 6K raw footage on DaVinci Resolve. Before I saw this happen, it was almost like the iPad Pro could do anything. And even though I did find this limitation in video editing, I couldn't find it when it comes to gaming. And that's what this video is all about. Surprise, surprise, the M2 iPad is way too powerful for all the games you can get on the App Store or on Apple Arcade. Also, no game looks bad running on the iPad Pro. This is one of the main reasons I'll say that this is definitely the ideal unofficial console in Apple's lineup. What I'm talking about is its XDR display. See, you could argue that the iPad Pro's display is better than the XDR display on the MacBook Pro. And overall, you'd probably be right. See, the iPad has a 12.9-inch 2-point-something-K display, so it's not quite as sharp as the MacBook's 3-point-something-K display. But maybe more importantly in the real world, it gets brighter. They can both go up to about 1600 nits with HDR content, but you're not going to be playing a lot of HDR games. When it comes to non-HDR content, the iPad gets twice as bright as the new MacBooks. Because new MacBooks can only hit about 500 nits of brightness with non-HDR content, but the iPad can stay at 1000 nits with non-HDR content. Add in the fact that it also has 120Hz refresh rate, plus the power to handle those games to support it, and long story short, you're not going to have any problems with the iPad Pro's display. I'm not sure what more you can really ask for that'll improve your gaming experience significantly. The 12.9-inch iPad Pro has a great display for gaming. Now, another piece of hardware that the iPad has that's great for gaming are its speakers. The iPad has a quad speaker system that produces a very full and rich sound. A fuller and richer sound than 98% of laptops out there. Now, you might question that number and think I'm exaggerating or something. But the reason I'm confident in saying that the iPad speakers are better than those from 98% of laptops out there is because of this guy. This is the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And if you know this device, along with a 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 version, then you know that these speakers are better than 99.9% of laptops out there, like hands down. What has really impressed me is the fact that things sound comparable, even in loudness, with the speakers on the iPad Pro. Now, the iPad speakers will lose if you put it up against the MacBook Pro speakers, but the iPad can really go head-to-head with the best MacBook speakers out right now. That's a really great and really underrated feat for the iPad Pro. Now, with that being said though, this only applies to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, because the 11-inch version sounds a noticeable amount not as loud or as full. It's still good though, it's just not as good. Oh, and the same thing applies to the display. The 11-inch iPad, even the M2 version, doesn't have the same XDR display that the 12.9-inch version here does. The 11-inch iPad still has a very good display though, but it's just not as good as the 12.9-inch version. Mainly when it comes to the brightness and the way it handles blacks, most of all, in my opinion. Anyways, long story short, the iPad's hardware, the display, the speakers, and the powerful chip inside of it all come together to create a great gaming experience. The only thing that doesn't really help the gaming experience so much, and what could even take the excitement that you might have about gaming on the iPad when you look at just the hardware alone, and what I'll say is easily the weakest part of the gaming experience with the latest and greatest iPad Pro, is the actual library of games you're able to play on the iPad itself. See, I don't want to be too harsh on the iPad. It's easier to forgive it than it is to forgive the MacBook, for example, because the MacBook is an actual laptop, you know? But at the end of the day though, if the iPad wants to grow up and be a big boy, it just has to get better games. Like, think about it. We're here experiencing this device as an actual console, right? Well, what if we compare the iPad to another portable console, like the PS Vita from Sony or the Nintendo Switch, for example? When it comes to actual power, well, the iPad will definitely destroy both of them. Maybe even both of them combined with the M2 chip now. But as a hardcore gamer that plans to use his or her device to play games and then some more games and then some more games and to do nothing else, which device would you pick for all your portable gaming needs? The iPad, the PS Vita, or the Nintendo Switch? Which device would you pick for gaming only? Or which device would you definitely not pick for gaming only?
I'm Paul.
And which gaming device do you just respect the most as a gamer? I think we probably have a lot of people religiously rooting for the PS Vita console because of the memories and all they shared with that. There'll definitely be a lot of people rooting for the Nintendo Switch, of course, in the present. But where are my iPad gamers at? Huh? Yeah, even if they are a few of you religious iPad gamers, God bless your heart, I'm sure you have enough sense to not want to be so vocal when it's time to debate against Nintendo or PlayStation fans, you know? Just so you don't embarrass yourself by comparing a big iPhone to these iconic gaming devices. Now, to be fair though, the iPad gaming library has grown and fan favorite AAA games are available and have been coming out in general, and whenever you're sitting out just playing one of these games with the iPad, games that you'd actually play on your PS5, well, when you see the iPad running things perfectly smooth on its beautiful and bright 120Hz display, man, the iPad really does feel like a great portable console. But still, at the same time, you can play this exact same game on your iPhone, you know? I think for the iPad to become a better gaming device, an iconic gaming device even, well, we've already established that it has more than enough of the hardware it needs, so that's no problem. But what it absolutely will need is the software, the games. To become anything close to an iconic gaming device, the iPad will need to get a library of iconic games. Until then, these videos will continue to seem like the iPad is just pretending to be a console, or like it's just a powerful device that we're just testing some available games on, not a powerful device that can pull or even tempt a whole other audience of people that are probably using a Nintendo Switch right now for all their on-the-go gaming needs. Now, this is not anything new with the iPad though, because everyone knows the hardware is great, so if you're going to talk about anything that's not so great, even outside of gaming, it'll have to be the software. With that being said though, this actually isn't so much of a problem today in 2023, both in and out of gaming. Why? Because gaming wise, there are other ways to play, which we'll talk about later. But non-gaming wise, you don't have to worry about the iPad's lack of applications so much because of the sponsor of this video, aka SetApp. Now, SetApp is a productivity service that you can use to solve any task or problem you want in probably the most convenient way possible on any Mac, iPad, or iPhone, basically any Apple device.
And what's cool about SetApp is that it's very, very easy to use. Like, even my grandpa could use it, and he's dead.
So let's say you deleted a file and you want it back. That means what you're looking for is a data recovery app. But you might not be a tech person, and you might not know the term data recovery, you know? I know my grandpa definitely wouldn't, because he's, you know. But if you want your deleted file back, all you have to do is open the SetApp app and type, "I want my deleted file back," and boom, you see data recovery options right there. If you're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, AI these days, and you're looking for the best AI apps out for Mac, well, no need to Google it and read some article and download some things from specific websites. You can just type AI and boom, you see the best AI apps for Mac. You can just trust it, you know? But But it's not just MacBook applications though, because you can go to the available on iOS and iPadOS section, and let's say you're not trying to game, but you're just trying to do some math. You know, the iPad doesn't have a calculator for whatever reason, but that doesn't matter because all you have to do is type do some math. And then you get options that you can click on, and then you choose the camera on your iPad or your iPhone, and you can scan and download it directly on your device. SetApp is great for all your Apple devices at once. Well, maybe not your Apple Watch or your HomePod or your AirPods or other devices that don't count. But that's not the best thing about SetApp though, because I'll say the best thing about SetApp is that you can have all the data recovery, AI, and calculator apps you want, as well as a whole lot of other apps in a whole lot of different categories that I can't possibly talk about in just one video. You can have all of these apps and you don't have to go pay for each of them specifically. Even if you have to, if you Googled it and went straight to the developer's website. So you can have 100 paid apps and you actually don't need to pay for a single one. All you have to do is pay the subscription fee of about $9.99 a month and you can have as many applications as you want for no extra charge. That's a great deal. So if you're interested, just use my link in the description below so you can get your free 7-day premium trial and you can get to experience all the meaningful apps you might want and to solve all the problems that you might need to. So yeah, use that link, and thanks again SetApp for sponsoring this video. Now, with that being said though, an app you're never going to find on SetApp is like GTA or something like God of War or Spider-Man, for example. But just basically all the big boy AAA games that you might want to play on the iPad, but you can't natively. That's why I say the iPad just can't be an iconic gaming device, because the native gaming library is just lackluster compared to other proper gaming devices. Now, with all this being said though, things aren't that bad when it comes to the actual games you get to play on the iPad. Apple Arcade is constantly growing, and there have been more and more games being added over the last couple of years that people can't stop playing, with more and more coming out almost every week. Even big boy games are now available for you to enjoy on the iPad. And with its power and great display, it's probably just about the best portable device to run these games on. On a positive note though, and with that being said, apart from the cool big boy games that have been and are constantly being added, at least their mobile versions, well, since we're in 2023 now, there are other ways to play on the iPad. I'm talking even all the games the PS5 can play. How do you do this? Well, PS5 remote play. Yeah, it doesn't exactly run on the iPad itself, well of course, but if you don't like the selection of games you get with the iPad, this is one of the ways you can bypass its lackluster gaming library and take advantage of its great XDR display as well. You can basically kiss 120Hz gaming goodbye though, if you want to play non-natively on the iPad, because internet gaming isn't there yet, like all the way, at least for now. Speaking of internet gaming, another way you can game on the iPad, as well as almost any other device these days, what I'm talking about is cloud gaming in general. And you have many options these days. There's Xbox, there's Boosteroid, there's Amazon Luna, and even more. On the gaming library on these, you get to play big boy games that you probably won't be able to natively on the iPad for years. Now, apart from cloud gaming specifically and native gaming, the only other way I know you can game on the iPad is through emulation. And I almost never talk about emulation or even cloud gaming so much in these types of videos because I feel like it kind of changes the narrative of what I really think about a device like the iPad, for example. See, in 2023, something like emulation is just so good and just works so well that it can take any powerful device with a great screen but a bad gaming library and turn it into a powerful device with a great screen and an incredible gaming library, you know? And that just completely changes what the iPad is as a gaming device. If you're really into cloud gaming and emulation though, then you absolutely love the iPad. For the display, the speakers, the portability, the battery life, but probably not for the native gaming library itself. In my opinion, that's still the case with the iPad in general. But that's if we're being really serious though. I'm really holding this to the standards of a portable console. Because for the standards of a tablet, well, I mean, this is fine, you know. It definitely is punching above its weight hardware-wise. Software-wise, not so much. But if what you want is a tablet, then I guess you wouldn't even complain about that, right? The iPad does have at least a tablet software, right? Now, if what you want is a portable console though, which is what we're reviewing the iPad as today, well, the only thing I think will change the iPad story and really make it a great portable console isn't something like more and more power being put into the next iPad. I mean, that'll be nice, of course, but what'll be better and what'll actually change things is something like an announcement that Apple is partnering with Nintendo and maybe even Sega to make all Nintendo and Sega games available on Apple Arcade. Now that, plus the iPad's power, plus the fact that Apple will probably push for optimization, that will turn this device from just a powerful tablet to a device that can play Sonic, Mario, and just all those retro games in 2K at 120 frames per second with no sweat. It has the M2 chip inside of it, it has controller support, it has a great screen, great speakers, great battery life, and just long story short, the iPad Pro has great gaming potential. But at this exact moment in time, the iPad can't do all these things, and it really is great. It really is a great device, but at the same time, as a gaming device specifically, I have to say that it's just not quite there yet. But that's just what I think, though. You should let me know what you think about the iPad and gaming in the comment section below. You should like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you want to see some more. And thank you for watching, okay? Bye-bye.